Oh, hey.
Welcome to Chronicles of the Phoenix. On this amazing day.
So cold.
I hope it's not when this comes out.
Yes. Oh, that would be lovely.
I hope everyone's going, what are you talking about? It's 80 degrees today.
Wait, when is this coming out? Will it be our birth month?
Yeah.
Oh, birth month. Your big birth month.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this should be our first March episode.
Ooh.
Today, we are going to talk about armoring up and why we dodge vulnerability when we need it the most. What that means is we're going to be talking about how important vulnerability can be, and especially how in relationships, we can often take bids from others to express their needs as criticism toward us and feel the need to defend against it rather than being open and staying curious. It's a big one.
That's a really big one. I'm seeing that a lot, talking about that a lot, I should say, in my practice.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard. I feel like it takes kind of a constant challenging.
It does. And I think we're seeing this on like a national, global level of it's safer in some ways for people to sit in defense than to be vulnerable and stay curious in the short term.
I think so many feel like in that moment, it's easier to do that when piece of what we want to think through today is really how much you can also lose by staying in that space rather than finding it within you to stay curious about what someone might be communicating to us.
Well, and to recognize, and I think that that's the piece that's really cool as a therapist to get to help people practice the vulnerability and to recognize, like when working with couples, when someone has the opportunity to make a vulnerable statement that then is received defensive, right? Like, and the pattern is persistent. It's the pattern that we all do sometimes.
Yep.
And as an observer, I'm able to say, wait, time out. Instead of responding defensively like you always do, sit with and respond to the vulnerability of what your partner just said and be curious with that. It transforms the conversation.
Yeah, and it feels like that vulnerability that starts on the part of the person who is expressing the need, like quickly transforms to the other person into their difficulty with feeling vulnerable themselves or even taking on the vulnerability of their partner in a way. And that contributes to the discomfort because it's not just your vulnerability. It can also be, in this case, like you're saying, the vulnerability of the partner who's expressing the need.
And it ultimately results in really effective problem solving that had been getting stuck previously.
Yeah. Yep. So when they can make that switch, it changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah. So why do we do that?
Well, I think our lovely friend Brené Brown gives us a great framework for this. I think so much of her work, if anyone knows her, I'm sure most people do who listen to this. Her name is out there and she does a lot of great work, but vulnerability is a big piece of her work and what she's studied.
Famous social worker that we love.
The best, just the best. So if you haven't heard of her, you definitely have to check her out.
We have her all over. Her quotes are all over our office.
Yep. Yeah, she just has this beautiful way of taking complex concepts and making them so palatable and simple but yet profound. It's like such a wild balance that she does. But with that, we want to talk a little bit about, we're going to have a couple excerpts from her book, Daring Greatly, that we talk about today. But this one is from chapter 4, which is called The Vulnerability Armory. And Brené says, as children, we found ways to protect ourselves from vulnerability, from being hurt, diminished, and disappointed. We put on armor. We used our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors as weapons, and we learned how to make ourselves scarce, even to disappear. Now as adults, we realize that to live with courage, purpose, and connection, to be the person whom we long to be, we must again be vulnerable. We must take off the armor, put down the weapons, show up, and let ourselves be seen.
That's really easier said than done.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's so much, right? That's like the 4th chapter of this book where there's so much more depth and information about how to go about this and kind of justifying the why. But we're hopeful that today we can tap into just some of those things so that not only we can understand the value of this, but also gain some skills in how to do it.
I've been talking about this a lot because it was such a, profound moment of clarity for me in terms of our partnership. But what happens to me as a 7 when I go to a place of stress. Last week we had applied for a grant and I hadn't uploaded the right document. And I went to this complete shame place because I was like, oh my gosh, like we're a startup business that doesn't have a lot of money at this point. And not that the grant was for a lot of money, but we had earmarked the grant for specific things that would help us set ourselves up for the future. And I value our partnership so much. And I want to do right by you. And I just went to this place of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to disappoint Courtney. I should have done this right. I thought I did this right. What's wrong with me? And I go to this like really negative place. And then I go to like, you know, the unhealthiest side of myself, which results in me being hypercritical of people around me, getting really agitated and irritable. And just, I would have, if I didn't have such a calm presence around me being you, I would have had a very hard time not being defensive and being vulnerable in that moment of, and having in conversation. I don't know if that's making sense, but.
Oh yeah. I think it's just interesting to note where we go to and what that armoring up looks like to each of us, because I think, right from what you're saying, jumping to that critical place in a weird way, it makes us feel like there's something to control in a way, because it also moved you to action really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's something you do anyway. But in this case, it was sort of, it sounds like it was driven by this, like, I have to make this right. I screw something up. Like, I'm not going to stop till I figure it out now.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to move every mountain in my way until I solved it. And I did. We did solve it within less than 24 hours.
Yeah. So that piece worked, right? And so that's the thing that's hard about this, though, to your point, is like sometimes these things are actually effective and it's hard to let them go because we see the need that it serves. And sometimes it feels like that need works in a weird way. And I think in this case, when you talk about that stress and how it breeds the critical outlook, sometimes I think we kind of tell ourselves this story that we need that to like do a better job.
Well, it activates our like fight, flight, freeze system, and I go to fight. Right. Other people will go to freeze, right? Or
exactly. And that's more my response, to be honest with you. Like what we noted about this when we talked about it happening after was I stayed grounded and calm. A piece of that is because when I get in a space of, and I didn't have the same response as you in the sense that I personalized it as much. I think because I just viewed it as something we have to figure out at some point, but I kind of just ended up rolling into freeze mode of like, well, eventually we'll have to figure this out, but maybe I'm just not going to look at it right now.
Right.
Instead of like, let's figure it out and do it. And your drive to keep pushing forward really is what pulled me along and through that same opposite reaction of yours to just tackle the problem and then go, oh, like I don't have to avoid the fact that something's not right with our application. I can just lean into it and fix it and we're okay.
But also because I was so flooded in the stress situation and in this like shame-based place, I didn't even read the email fully to know that we had a week.
I know. And it's interesting too, because I just took it totally because of that. And I had read it. Took it totally to mean like, oh, get us this stuff. We don't have it. And then next week we'll review it and it'll be fine.
I skimmed it and read it. You failed. You suck. You're a terrible human. And instantly like red alert.
Yeah.
Alert.
Your shame got so triggered by that. Because one of the things was something I needed to do. I think we decided that the system, I needed to give my identification, and it didn't ask for that, so we don't have to.
I didn't take any responsibility for that.
No, but it was something I felt like, oh shoot, I better figure this out. Should I've been thinking of that or whatever? But it was just, that's a great example, and I think it's highlighting our different responses in that moment.
But in that moment, though, like it's harder for me for sure. And with the people around me then to, like with my family or whatever, to be able to stay grounded in relationship and in conversation and to respond from a more relational place and stay curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that shame trigger that kicks off for you in that experience is sometimes leads us to feel like that shame is there to be protective, but it also is there to get in the way of us actually being open and feeling everything that we're feeling about the situation, right? Because another process could be, instead of getting to the point where the cortisol is flowing in and I'm becoming perfectionistic in this moment, like, could be, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. Like, did I mess this up? And that could have resulted in me being like, we have a whole week to do this. And they didn't seem to care. They just need us to give it to them. And it looks like we're fine.
Right. It could have saved me a lot of stress and anxiety and maybe a less testy conversation with my husband.
Yeah, right.
Had I slowed down and been more vulnerable in that situation, to check in with myself, to allow like you the space to be able to have that conversation with me so that I could have accessed reality a little bit more, to be like, because it wasn't until after the fact that we were already like through it and solved the problem that I realized that we had a week. And that really would have saved a lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah, but I think the point in all of this, as you said, easier said than done, is our biology is, we are wired to respond in this way to stress. Like, that is what our stress response and our nervous system is set up to do. If we go to that initial piece of fight, flight, freeze, and that kicks in, like, this process starts, and the next thing we know, we're having higher levels of cortisol and we're responding as if there's a threat.
Yep.
And so interrupting that takes a lot of awareness and a lot of hard work. So, there's also that part of just giving yourself grace in this. And yes, we can do the Monday night quarterback and look at it. But at the end of the day, yeah, there's such a natural process unfolding.
Yeah. We're a work in progress.
Always.
So do you notice a physical sign when you're starting to get defensive?
Yes. My physical sign of defensiveness is, I feel like within my personality, it's so hard for me to express things that are difficult or how I'm feeling about something when the feeling is a negative feeling or when I'm angry at something. And sometimes defensiveness and anger feel very connected to me. And so it almost feels like I wait until I'm like at the exploding point, and then it bubbles over and I'm like willing to say all the things. And so I say all of that because the physical sign that I notice is honestly like my heart races. Like, I sometimes can even feel like my heart beating like in my neck. Like, because I'm like, if I'm like defensive enough, like if it gets me to that place, that's a real sign. Like, I get hot in the face. Like, I just enter that stress response. Like, that's what it feels like. I feel, and honestly, like I'm almost not fully connected. Like, I'm just like rolling with this response that, and it's a quick response. It happens very fast. I don't think it's always so big where I feel all of those physical signs, but I definitely get at least a sense of tenseness and kind of like clenching feeling in my body. That's the best way for me to describe it. Do you notice anything?
I feel like a tightness almost in my chest. And I definitely feel like my heart rate goes up. But like my arms, everything feels like tighter. And I feel like this, I don't know if I can describe it, but like this almost pressured feeling. And almost like, I don't know, the best way I could describe it is like almost this anxiety like in my body. Like, yeah, it's like this physical anxious feeling in my body that I just want to expel.
Yeah.
I just want to, because I'm not generally an anxious person. So when I feel anxious, I just want to, which I think is what drives me to get whatever task it is, whatever it's bothering me, done as sufficiently as possible because I want to get the feeling away as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And I know if I achieve the task that I feel like is causing this shame cycle, I can like check the box and move forward.
Right. And that does allow you to move through it.
Yeah.
And I think the greater process is recognizing sort of the connection between feeling like you've screwed something up and disappointed someone and feeling a responsibility to that and that you've failed.
Yes.
Right. That becomes like, if you get that feeling out by doing a task, which again, in this case, it was a very direct line of like, this thing needs to be done. And it wasn't easy to do, but it needed to get done. And then I can go, okay, that's done. None of that's true. Nothing happened. It's all good. It fixes the problem. But the internal response of what's happening, the vulnerability piece of it is like connecting in with, wow, I so quickly go from blaming myself to feeling shame to feeling responsible. And that's the emotion and stress I end up carrying that will repeat itself over and over again in different scenarios if we don't figure that out.
Yeah, it's even like, I don't love having difficult conversations and stuff, but I would rather have the difficult conversation to get rid of the feeling and the vulnerability part of that, just to move through it rather than have it fester because it'll consume my brain.
Right. And I do think that's another difference with like how our nervous systems respond. Like as a freezer, I can like disconnect from it. Like I don't have to sit in the feeling. And I know that if I just like do the thing that I do, which is ignore that and avoid it, like it's not sitting in me all the time until it's bubbling up. Like I'm saying, then the next thing happens and then it's another level before I'm ready to just like, all right, now I'm having a reaction to this because I can't avoid it forever.
Yeah, I want to move through it, but sometimes I move through it before I'm ready or the other person's ready or the situation is ready to move through it because it's not processed or baked enough.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes. So thinking about that, Brené also talks about different patterns of the way that you can stay defended. And I thought this was really interesting. And I can think about the different people in my life and which place they might be. I'm curious which one you are. Lawyer, you cross-examine every word choice. Actually, if you recall, on Tuesday at 3:47, you said you cannot receive feedback without preparing a closing argument.
Yep.
Deflector, you responds to every concern with, well, what about when you turns every conversation into a counterattack? The emotional Uno reverse card champion. The stonewaller shuts down completely. I'm fine. Narrative, they were not fine. Emotional Fort Knox, nothing gets in or out. The perfectionist cannot handle criticism because everything must be flawless. If I can't be perfect, I'll be defensive instead. Armor made of achievement and control. The oversharer floodlighter floods with information to avoid actual vulnerability. Talks for 45 minutes to avoid feeling one feeling. Verbal smoke screen deployed. So in thinking about those, which defensive alter ego shows up for you most often?
Stonewaller.
Sense.
I'm definitely quick to say, oh, I'm fine. Nothing's bothering me. And yes, that ends up basically blocking all emotion one way or the other because I am just kind of spinning in like a shutdown mode. I probably have had some deflector in me and can do that too. And I don't know that I vocalize that as much because, as I've said, I'm not as comfortable telling people like, well, you did this, right? Like that's not my style. But internally, I can go to that space if I'm being told something and I take it as a criticism. I do often in my head start searching for that, like, oh, well, what have you screwed up? Like, why aren't you appreciating what I'm doing? Because I come up with this different narrative that tries to deflect away from the issue at hand. I don't know that I say it out loud as much. I might. I guess that's another one I can do. But I'd say those two are very close for me. What about for you?
So to your point, I think that I've worked on trying not to do these. But I feel like my husband would say I could be the lawyer. Perhaps the deflector at times as well. And maybe sometimes the stonewaller.
Yeah. And I think we can have any of these going on, right? I mean, I think in any given scenario, I can think of times where I've done every single one of these, depending on the situation and depending on who it is and my comfort level.
Yeah, I feel like there's certainly some people that I could do any one of these at any given time. Because there's some people that I would stonewall because I just wouldn't want to get into anything with them.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And I also, in the opposite direction, feel like when I am closer with people, I'd be much better at doing the lawyer thing because I feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
And therefore, I want to try really hard to win the situation. Right. I don't go through my life in that space, but I get more competitive with the people I'm comfortable with, like closest to, because, you know, I feel like I have more to, not worried about losing as much in terms of like bigger picture stuff. So I feel like there must be a bit more comfort with trying to pin detail-y things and other things on the people around me that I am closest with, honestly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Brené Brown's research has found that we defend against the story we're telling ourselves, not the actual situation. And simple phrases trigger threat response when we're already stressed. Our brain scans for danger. Ambiguous communication equals potential rejection.
Yeah. So in relationship, when we're approached or someone brings something up, our immediate response is to, if we're already stressed, we're jumping to danger, and maybe the communication isn't super clear yet, or we think something's coming down the pike, so we have a reaction.
Right. So when someone says, "Can we talk?"
Ugh, that's the worst. When I didn't get that text, "Can we talk?"
Oh.
Ugh, what happens to you when you hear that?
Yeah, I get like well, it depends, right? It depends, but oftentimes it is this like immediate like lump in your throat, like, oh. And sometimes it's like, what if I, like, you start to catalog, like, what could I have done to offend this person?
Yeah. And it depends on who it's coming from.
Totally.
Because, yeah, I think, like you said, either way, we're doing that process of like running back through time to figure out what could be going on. But the reality with it all is that we are essentially defending ourselves against imaginary criticism because our shame tells us we're already not enough. So that armor goes up even before we know what's being said. And that's exactly what that is. You get a text, you know someone wants to talk to you about something, we immediately assume there's something critical coming our way, or we're not doing a good job, or we've wronged somebody, and then we're defended before we even get into the conversation.
Right. And then it's shocking when it has nothing to do with you.
Right. If someone's like, "Oh, I just wanted to tell you about this thing that happened to me today," and I'm always like, why would you text me that?
Right. Can you lead with something different than...
My sister and I talk about this a lot. Like, if you get a text from like your parents that say like, "Can you call me?"
Oh,
worst.
The worst.
I'm like, who is dead? Oh my God, are you at the hospital? I go through it. This is instant in my head, but that's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Every time. That's terrifying. We always have to text, like, are you, if it comes in the middle of the day, especially, like, are you okay?
Just to make sure. So I think one of the things we're talking about when we are responding to that kind of triggering conversation, or that "can we talk" kind of thing, we go into our automatic response, is we automatically jump into thoughts ourselves, right? So everything you just said before, it's like, what did I do to make you mad? Like, did I do something wrong? And it can even go as far as like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not enough. Like, we just can spiral down with that shame spiral. And it leads us to a place of scarcity and really believing that we aren't enough, or we're not doing enough, we're not capable, and there's not enough to kind of go around. So we just fight, flight, freeze, like whatever our response is, right? And so that scarcity mindset, or even thinking like I'm not enough, and that negative thinking cycle protects us in some ways. It becomes our armor because it tries to block out the potential issue. It's almost like I'm trying to imagine ahead of time what I did wrong so I can be prepared for this conversation. And that's a version of armoring up. But the problem with it is that even if it feels like it's working to protect against the negative experience you're having, you're also pushing away the good and not letting the positive emotions in either. You can't just pick and choose what you're defended against in a way. Once you're armored, you're armored.
Yeah, you can't selectively numb.
Exactly. Exactly that. And so Brené Brown talks a lot about that in terms of foreboding joy. And so I just wanted to read another excerpt from her book about that. And Brené says, scarcity and fear drive foreboding joy. We're afraid that the feeling of joy won't last, or that there won't be enough, or that the transition to disappointment or whatever's in store for us next will be too difficult. We've learned that giving into joy is, at best, setting ourselves up for disappointment and, at worst, inviting disaster. And we struggle with the worthiness issue. Do we deserve our joy, given our inadequacies and imperfections? What about the starving children in the war-ravaged world? Who are we to be joyful?
When I first learned about foreboding joy, I don't think I realized how much that I sometimes did that. And especially working in a nonprofit, when we would not want to celebrate being fully staffed, for example, because we often weren't fully staffed. And so they're like, oh, don't say it because...
oh, yeah, we're going to jinx it.
We're going to jinx it or whatever. And it was, we're like, oh, wait. We need to just be present in the moment and be very excited about the team that we have and celebrate the fact that we have a full team right now.
Exactly.
And not be anticipating the fact that tomorrow we might not.
Exactly.
Maybe even at the end of the day, we might not, you know?
Right.
And it was just this interesting moment of realizing that that is something protective that I would do a lot. More often than I realized, actually.
Yeah, because if you think of scarcity as like not having enough, then the opposite of that is enough. And so that joy and being okay and celebrating like what we're doing is enough right now, or having gratitude to acknowledge that the things I have right now are enough for me. And in that moment, being fully staffed is a great thing, right? In that perspective, it's fulfilling that space of like being enough, even if for a moment in time, but we're so quick to just be looking for the next thing that's not working, or the next thing that says we don't have enough or we're not doing enough of a good job.
One question that I have is, how do you think that hope for the best, prepare for the worst connects with foreboding joy?
It connects a lot, because preparing for the worst is, I think, such a myth. And it's something that I believe probably every human does, has this thought that if I can just prepare enough for the bad thing that could be coming down the pike, then I will be ready when it comes. I won't hurt as much. It's not going to be a problem for me. I'll be prepared, you know, and I can go into my defensive mode of stonewalling and not feel anything because I've already thought about this happening. So too bad you can't get me. That's like,
yes.
And I think about that a lot because I go there a lot. And I think what happens is, when that's the mentality I'm having, it takes you right out of the present. You're not enjoying what's happening around you. You're not able to notice the good that could be happening. You're too focused on sort of like a future state of negativity. And it doesn't actually work. So you're kind of just robbing yourself of the experience of joy in a way.
Yeah. So I guess it's just another way of foreboding joy. Because to your point, it takes you completely out of the present. And it's sort of like a cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely. Because if I'm just looking for, right, I think this happens a lot with trauma and hypervigilance. And so a lot of people that we talk to in our practices, I think, have this experience of feeling this true need to prepare for all the possible problems that could exist because they've experienced horrible things. And so that serves a function for them to feel like they have some control. And the conversation I keep coming back to is twofold. One, what does preparing do? Does it actually make it hurt less? Does it make it that thing that you're afraid of happening actually not happen? Or, you know, so that's one leg of it. And the second is, when we stay so focused on looking for all the pitfalls and problems, can we actually enjoy the moment? Can we actually put our minds back into a space of feeling the array of emotion we might be having right here, right now, and not putting that out on this future problem that could or could not happen?
The other thing that I'm thinking about as we're talking is the teenagers. That we talk about it a lot with our own kids, but even in the kids that I work with, just pervasive anxiety. And we talked about that when we were referencing the anxious generation and the pressure that these kids are on. That seems more significant than the pressure that I experienced as a child.
Same. Yep.
And you know, and also these kids have access to so much more news. And when I think about the propaganda that is out there now and the fact that like journalism isn't what it used to be, like the fact checking and figuring out, and I don't know that all kids necessarily have the knowledge to know like which news sources are legitimate or whatever, and they're getting these sources on TikTok or Instagram, and some of it's really difficult, really hard news right now that they're getting and taking in. I just think that the level of anxiety that the kids are feeling and the pressure that they feel all the time.
Right. And what does that do, right?
What is that?
That's putting you into this state all the time.
It puts you into this state all the time. But also then we're in this society that there's a part of it that teaches you that vulnerability equals weakness, and that we know that we must be vulnerable to build trust, but we armor up when we need connection most.
Right. So we are completely robbed of that experience that becomes like the healing part of all of this, which is in connection. And I think what you're speaking to with kids and what they're exposed to, it's sort of just a constant state of your nervous system being on alert in all different ways because the world is so scary. They're having to make sense of things that we never had access to, even knowing whether it could or couldn't be going on. It wasn't really getting filtered to us.
But the news was like 6 p.m. or 10 p.m., right? Like it wasn't constant cycle. Like you can turn the news on 24/7 now, or it's on your handheld computer that you carry around, and it's sensational. Like it doesn't matter what channel you're watching, what's you know, which side of the aisle you're on, you're getting sensational news propaganda coming at you, pressure 24/7. And then if you have an underdeveloped brain and you don't have an adult that's helping you process that information and hold that, how do you make meaning of that? And not become fear-based and overwhelmed and flooded by the information that you're taking in?
I don't know that there is a way to do that without the connection like you're talking about. And so many, I think one of the big things, not only are our teenagers, you know, in that vulnerable space to have exposure to all of this because of their age and because of what they have access to, and they get phones and everything else. But then there's the piece of developmentally, a lot of teens are like separating and disconnecting more and keeping more to themselves and not sharing as much, or, you know, and there's that, you know, the healthy side of the development of like individuation and how important that is. But what that looks like sometimes is like isolation, or I'm not sharing with you anymore, you know? And so there's not really that invitation to come in and support and understand what their fears are, what's going on if they're not asking us for it. And sometimes they do, but there's a great chance that a lot of stuff is just in there and not being discussed.
And even beyond that, they're so busy between the rigors of academics, and then if you're an athlete or other extracurriculars and the expectations and and the social expectations that are out there. So what can you do to help let the armor down?
I think what you keyed into is if we make this direct understanding that what I need when I'm struggling most and I'm armored up is actually connection, it can feel counterintuitive at times, because just like you're saying, if our armor goes up, sometimes that means we're disconnecting. Sometimes that means we're stonewalling, like we talked about, you know, doing these other behaviors that essentially are all designed to either push people away or protect ourselves by disconnecting, right? I think if you think through every one of those ones that you read, like ultimately that behavior like makes people pretty upset with you if you're telling them they did something wrong too, or you're not hearing what they're saying, right? And it so effectively deprives you of the opportunity for connection. And so we have to really challenge ourselves to recognize that in that moment when we need that safety to be able to bring the armor down, what we need is connection. And so we have to lean into that discomfort, much like we've talked about before, and allow ourselves to have that experience. But I think sometimes that feels dissonant to us to need that.
Yeah. So I think we talked about like recognizing the physical responses that you have, because I was talking to someone recently. We were talking about, when do you get to a point in conversation when you know that you're going to be outside of your window of tolerance and you're not going to be able to stay grounded and rational? And what does that look like for you? And this individual was able to say, as soon as my thoughts start racing, I know I got to bail out. And it was like having that level of awareness was super important to know, like, if I stay longer than that, it's not good for me or anyone else around me.
Right.
So the more that you can do that, like, introspective work to recognize, like, for me, knowing like when my body gets that like sort of tight sort of feeling in my chest and shoulders, I know that I'm activated. Is how I would say it. And I need to kind of I really like square breathing.
I love square breathing.
In for 4 breaths, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. It's my favorite way to get rid of hiccups.
Oh my God, I had the worst hiccups last night.
Oh my God, it gets rid of them so fast. Spoonful of sugar does not work for me. Scaring me doesn't work. Square breathing, only thing that works.
That's amazing. I've never tried that for hiccups. I do try to hold my breath for a long time and raise my arms above my head and stretch out my abdomen.
Diaphragm?
My diaphragm, so it has room to stretch out and stop spasming, but I have not tried square breathing for that. I love square breathing when I'm trying to fall asleep. It makes me very bored to square breathe.
Okay.
It's very boring. I mean, I think that's the point. It's like one thing to focus on, but it's like nothing else is really happening when you're doing it.
It gives a lot of oxygen to your brain.
Yeah.
Get you online.
It does. But then it makes me go to sleep.
That's great.
I think it shuts off my thoughts in a weird way because I'm focused.
Because you have to focus on the counting.
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, though, in terms of understanding what makes you tick, what are your processes, what are your cues, that you know you're in this space, because that whole process we've talked about, identifying like what it looks like when you're defensive, what it feels like when you're defensive, those are all the signs that I'm going to either already be armored up or I'm armoring up. And when I'm in this space, this is actually when I need more connection. So maybe it's best for me to walk away right now so that I can regulate, and then we can come back to a conversation and actually engage in connection in a way where we can hear one another, or whatever it is that you need to sort of self-soothe when you find yourself becoming activated.
Well, and recognize, again, like you're saying, that those trigger points and how to stay curious. I think that when your partner or at work, your work partner brings out a statement that would normally trigger you and bring out defense in you, how can you practice curiosity and responding with an inquisitive question rather than defense, and see how it goes? How does it change the conversation?
Right. Yeah. So it's a little trial and error sometimes. And honestly, one of the biggest things I talk to people about are letting our closest people know that this is something we're working on, because it almost just gives you kind of a preemptive plan for being able to say, like, I'm trying to do this differently. Or, and I know we've mentioned that in past episodes, and that's something that's very hard for me to do. But I encourage people, because most of the time, whether I'm doing couples work or whether I'm working with one partner in the couple, I know that that other person, even if they're at home, is tired of this dynamic playing out the way that it does. And so I'll often send people home to say, talk to your partner tonight and say, you know, I'm trying to not do the thing I always do whenever we fight. Like, I'm actively going to be doing something different. I might be walking away if I have to. I might do this or whatever the plan is, and allow that natural experience to go differently. Much like you're saying, when you change it, it's sort of just testing it out. And if it works, great.
Yeah.
If it takes it down a notch, that's awesome. But maybe it's not the perfect thing that we need to get. We don't have the plan just right yet, but it lets people know you have awareness, and it also helps them to cue into you might be doing this differently and not pull for you to do the same thing you always do, because I think that also happens.
Right. Like speak with the shame, or speak whatever that feeling is within you that's typically causing you to have a negative reaction that keeps you on that same pattern that causes you to ultimately lose connection, that is going to be ultimately what you need in that moment. And changing, I'm feeling defensive right now because I'm scared.
Yep.
I'm feeling defensive right now because I'm overwhelmed. Prepare in advance if that's something that helps you. If you're someone that gets a little bit overwhelmed in the moment and doesn't feel comfortable processing on the spot.
And so I think some of our overall messaging with this, and a lot of what we have learned about both in our practice and in life, I think, is why vulnerability is so important, and recognizing that it's the space where connection happens, innovation, like when we're feeling safe. I think it's such a cognitive distortion in a way to think that vulnerability leads to safety, but it actually is the thing that creates safety. And so we have one last section of Brené's book where it references the title, Daring Greatly, and we thought it would be helpful to summarize why this is important. She says, daring greatly means engaging with our vulnerability, which can't happen when shame has the upper hand, and the same is true for dealing with anxiety-fueled disconnection. If we want to fully experience love and belonging, we must believe that we are worthy of love and belonging. Connection is the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. Belonging is the innate human desire to be part of something larger than us. So good.
So good.
I love her.
So why do you think we've disconnected and so many people are not feeling connected right now?
I think a combination of things that are just kind of where we are as a culture in this country lead to this becoming so easy to do, whether it's technology, grind culture, right? We work ourselves as much as we can, and then we go home and numb out and are tired and don't have any time for connection with family. Or when we are connecting, are we all sitting on the couch with our phones in our hands, not talking? Are we interacting with people in the moment out in public when we're waiting for our coffee? Or are we all on our phones with our earbud in, listening to something or talking to somebody and not paying attention to what's happening around you? I think those, because it's even easier than it's been, I think, in the past, there are so many ways, and there are so many ways to just disconnect so easily. I think it creates a pathway that tells us that that's fine and this is how it's supposed to be because everybody's doing this. That's a piece of how I look at it. And I know I was somebody who I know cognitively and understand all of the research about like technology and connection and like how to be present and what it does to all of that. But I also am an avid phone user and technology user, and I love technology and I believe in using it the right way. But I also fall victim to the same things a lot of people do, which is it becomes like a time suck for me and I fall into it. And I remember one of the trainings we did last year where they asked us to be present for 2 whole days without our phones and said, you can put them away, but it would be even better if you didn't bring it at all to this class for 2 days. And I was like, what? Like how? Yeah. I just felt at that moment. And we were still working at our other job at the time too. So that also, to me, that's why I connected in with grind culture, because it also reinforces the need to be available all the time, the need to be checking, the need to be on top of like working at all times. So I remember in my head, I always had this excuse of like, but I need to for work. I need to have my phone in case somebody needs me, which as if there aren't 40 other ways that person could access support. But I remember thinking how hard it would be. And then I remember challenging myself to do it and realizing how transformative it was to be in a room in a live training with a group of people and not have the ability or the desire to just tap out and jump to my phone, which I was doing probably all the time in meetings and other things before that, before I was really challenged to change it. So I say that because I think it's just been, I made every excuse under the sun to normalize that as a process that felt like it was just okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly learned, or maybe not so quickly, that even though the disconnection from the phone and more connection with humans in the room around me was uncomfortable, it had a huge impact. And I won't really ever forget that. And I should probably practice that more.
Yeah. What, if anything, gives you hope now in sort of Brené Brown's work and the lessons of vulnerability and moving forward with connection and people learning to lean into love and belonging, stay more connected?
By having like the access to information,
to have them access to information and sort of like learning the lessons and the pain of the current state of everything, and really desiring something different.
I think the hope lies in the amount of research she has poured into understanding that, just like that middle excerpt we talked about, where it kind of gets into the mentality of, who am I to feel joy right now? Like, I feel like that's a big one. And I think when everything is overwhelming and we have access to everything and it feels like a lot of it is negative, or all of it, what we learn through this process of reconnecting and giving ourselves the ability to remove our armor is that the engagement in the things that are still good for us and positive for us is the thing that allows us to connect and be more effective and actually potentially participate in making change. So that's what I go to thinking about. It's just how we know scientifically it's still more effective to allow ourselves to have the joy and feel those things.
What was it that someone said in group profoundly, that joy is the resistance?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And being present and actually in enjoying your life and engaging in your life, because you have the privilege to do so.
Right.
And being present is actually resistance.
Yeah, it's a form of resisting. Yep. And that has stuck with me.
Mm-hmm, me too.
Because you're not falling into this automatic, pre-planned setup dynamic. Like when you talk about propaganda and other things, like all of these things are created. And we talked about that a couple episodes ago too, and how these systems thrive and survive the way that they do. And so the resistance is not allowing that to do the thing it's trying to do, which is numb, cause pain, want us to disconnect. Because everything has a better chance, every system, every power structure has a better chance of survival if we're not actually connecting in with other people and feeling the good stuff. If we're removed from it, we're not able to make change.
So be present, connect, and be joyful.
Yes.
Okay. So takeaways to carry that forward is defensiveness is not a character flaw. It's a nervous system response to perceived threat. Shame makes us armor up. Recognizing shame is the first step to softening. Vulnerability is not oversharing or weakness. It's emotional honesty with the right people. You cannot selectively numb. Armor keeps out pain and joy. The armor is heavy and you're allowed to put it down. Connection happens in the space where armor used to be, and that's terrifying and worth it. We wanted to share one final Brené Brown quote to close out this conversation. Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome.
Yes. So true.
Yeah. That's the work.
Yeah. So thank you for listening today. We hope that you all gain something from this conversation and can lean into thinking about your own armor and vulnerability and what that means to you. And if you have any reflections from this episode or things that stood out, we'd love for you to share that with us. Like the podcast, comment, and We love to hear what you think.
We also want to encourage you to tune in to our March 20th episode, because it is going to be a very special one. It's going to be honoring and celebrating the birth and a milestone birthday of our one and only Courtney.
Oh my goodness. I'm excited for it.
Yay.
All right. Well, we will see you in the next episode in 2 weeks.
See you later.